I am back and many thanks to the sponsors. Really appreciate that. It was a last minute idea and people just ran to the opportunity and I say thank you. Here we are still on the subject of podcasting while Black. I understand that Black folks want to hear from Black people. And today our subject is podcasting is a business. Now we heard from Nagalia Desravine's MBA. I want to bring on a man who is very dear and near to my heart. When I when it was time for me to get back into podcasting, I lost my confidence, didn't have my voice, wasn't sure about who'd want to listen to me. I mean, just cry me a river. I was a mess. But I went to Prince George's County and I heard this gentleman, I watched this gentleman speak. And I came back home and I wanted to work with him, but I wasn't sure. You know how he vetted me. It wasn't like I was going to choose him. He vetted me. The rest is history. And I'm Christian. I'll tell anybody. He came at a mighty price, but God provided what I needed because I needed someone who would see me, who would hear me as a podcaster, who would see the podcaster that I could become and the one that I am today. So let me bring him on. I'm talking about the one and only Brother Bedford. Brother
Hey,
Bedford, you the
Margo.
man.
I'm the man sitting next to the woman. How are
Word
you,
it.
Margo?
I am good. I tell
Great.
you, these last couple of days I've been like a little kid at Christmas. It's just crazy.
This is
You know,
awesome.
I'm in my element, but
Indeed.
I'm gonna put my feet on the ground and I'm gonna ask you some questions because when we move into this thing of podcasting as a business, I want people to understand that you've been in business different kinds of ways for some time.
Yes.
So you are not a novice at all.
No, no, not at all.
And we start out the fact that you at once upon a time cleaned up, you were in the entertainment industry,
hmm
you were flipping houses, those, as you say, those dirty, nasty houses. You
hmm
moved into that. And then what happened? How is it that you got into conversations with millionaires? This audio project that you undertook.
Yeah.
You went in and boom. Take us there, Brother Bedford.
Yeah. No, thank you, Margo. First, I just want to say before I get started, congratulations to you. I'm happy and honored to be celebrating this day with you that you do every year. So this is truly an honor for me to have seen your growth and development, and to see you still pushing forward and doing all of the great things that you're doing. So again, I applaud you and thank you for having me. I have my her business, her voice, her conversation right here in front of me. So this is a project that we worked on together, that kind of marries what you're doing with the podcasting. And I just wanted to kind of say that because you're not a novice anymore either. I mean, you've been building out this platform to serve many people, women in particular, but again, brothers and sisters who have a voice to share through podcasting. You've been putting in the work. So I just want to applaud you, and thank you for the invitation, Margo.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Um, uh, you mentioned the real estate piece, and that's really how I got into this whole internet piece. One of the gurus that I was studying as it relates to real estate investing invited me to a conference in Orlando, Florida. And that conference had nothing to do with real estate. It was all around this industry that's now really taking a hold of not just America, but the entire world. It's this information marketing business where people are providing knowledge, experience, expertise, and packaging it into products and services and podcasting and webinars and all of this type of stuff. It looks different now than it did then 20 something years ago. But that's how I got started, that this guru invited me to this conference, and he mentioned how he made more money selling the how-to courses than he did investing in local real estate. Now, he was making a killing in investing in real estate, but that was local. But when you got into this space of the internet and information marketing, it became a global business, right? You can literally go global overnight just by having an internet connection and a domain name. And so that's how I got into it, started selling my knowledge online in small digital reports. I heard you and Negalia mention Amazon earlier. That's how I started watching Amazon doing the ebooks. And so we were doing reports instead of loading them to Amazon as ebooks directly. We had them as PDF documents so that we can sell them faster and make more money from them. And one of the courses that I was studying from that real estate guru, that I purchased the license to that event, came back. It was about this industry, and it was all about internet marketing was the piece that stood out for me. The whole selling information stood out, but at that time, the internet was just beginning. We still had dial-up. PayPal wasn't out. We just mentioned Amazon. There was no YouTube. There was no Facebook. And so there was a different way of doing it. However, it intrigued me. And I started selling my information online, but I was reading a book called Conversations with Millionaires. That book had only one Black person in it, and that was Wallace Amos from Famous Amos Cookies. He was the only Black person in it. And that's when the idea hit me to now answer your question directly, Margo. That's when the inspiration hit me. I said, man, wouldn't it be nice if someone interviewed our millionaires, Black millionaires, and then put them into an ebook? Because again, that was a format that we were doing. And that's how it started. And I called Dr. Frazier, who was my very first interview, Dr. George C. Frazier, one of our iconic figures in the business space, wrote Success Runs in Our Race. Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, another one of our iconic figures, Les Brown. So I started calling these individuals to get the interviews, had those interviews in an audio format, had them transcribed. And that transcription became the ebook known as Conversations with Black Millionaires, and uploaded that online. And as you said, the rest is history. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's how I got involved in interviewing Black millionaires.
That's amazing. Where did you get because I mean, you became a podcaster. Where did you get the nerve to even call Dr. Frazier? I mean, Les Brown. How did you get the nerve? Because so many people say, I can't do that. Well, they won't even talk to me. How can I get past the gatekeeper?
Yeah.
Because in those days, you didn't have LinkedIn. You had to get past the gatekeeper. Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting, Margo, because as you mentioned, podcasting really wasn't a feature then. Those interviews, even though I recorded them audio, they weren't necessarily for the podcast initially. That's what makes this story so interesting, is that. So first, let me answer your question directly. You said, how did I get the courage? I actually just followed instructions. Again, that course told me that if you inquired and asked experts for interviews, that they would do it. And of course, now you're saying what's the logic behind that? Here's the flip side. I heard you and Negalia talking earlier. People who have businesses, who are selling books, who are selling conferences, who are selling home study courses, as Dr. Frazier was, as Les Brown was, as Dr. Dennis Kimbrough was, they wanted an audience so that they can continue to sell. And so, of course, they would give the interview to sell their courses. Now, here's the interesting thing. This internet thing was new. I was a no-name. So at the very beginning, when I called down to Dr. Frazier's office, his assistant, she shot me down. I mean, terribly. She shot me down real bad. It kind of destroyed my ego, the confidence, as you just pointed to. But I did what the course asked, and I said, well, I'll leave my name and number. And the reason she turned me down, because I wasn't CNN, because I wasn't one of the notable media outlets that probably Dr. Frazier was known for being on. And so she didn't think this knucklehead from Detroit had an audience or anything to offer Dr. Frazier. But again, he knew different. He knew that he needed a different audience, and to be a part of me just promoting whatever it was that he was doing, he was more than happy to give me the interview. And so the confidence came, Margo, by just following instructions. And just as you begin to go over those little benchmarks, over those little hurdles, because again, Dr. Frazier led to Dr. Kimbrough. Then once I did Dr. Kimbrough, I was like, okay, now I'm getting a little confident. Dr. Kimbrough led to Les Brown, and then they led to Kathy Hughes, and then Michael V. Roberts, and Dr. Randall Pinkin. And so I kept going and going and going. But it was the very first one that began to help me with the confidence to get going with it.
Man, that's what I'm talking about. Follow, I heard you say 2 or 3 times, following the instructions.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that down. We're going to circle back to that because
Yeah.
that's going to tie you to something else. We always talk about, okay, so you have the interviews, they are in book form. People are coming out of the woodwork, they want to speak with you. You're in the newspaper, you're on radio, you are smoking hot. So what you said that you were going to be able to give Dr. Kimbrough, Dr. Frazier, Kathy Hughes, you were able to give them that
Yeah.
to them because you got all this shine. You got shine, they
Yeah.
got shine. It was like, man.
Yeah.
So, what can people take from that as far as monetization? Because everybody wants to get into podcasting, and it's their thought. They're after a few episodes. Okay, how do I make money on this? Do they follow through the media path? And do you find that that podcasting is long tail? What do you say to that?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of giving them what they wanted. Because as I got those interviews and we had them transcribed, I had no idea that it would go beyond, just making a few bucks. Because again, following the formula that I was taught, all I was trying to do was create a $29 or $39 ebook of Black millionaires, right? But then I wrote a press release and we sent that press release out where it said the budding entrepreneur seeks millionaire advice and gets it. That was the headline of that press release, and that press release went out. And so from that press release, that's when all of the calls started coming for me to say, man, how did you get these millionaires to tell you what it is? And then what is it that they told you, right? So, and that was the best thing about that particular product, is that I didn't have to come up with any new knowledge. They would just ask me, what did Dr. Frazier teach you? And then I can just tell them a part of what he said in the interviews. And then what did Les Brown say to you? And then what did Kathy Hughes say to you? So I was just answering the questions with the information that I had received from the ebooks. And then, of course, now leveraging that by being on Warren Valentine, XM satellite radio was hot at that time. So I was on all of those financial shows, the Black financial shows, Blog Talk Radio. So everybody was getting me on their shows to talk about what these millionaires shared with me. And then at the end of every interview, they would simply ask, well, how do people get this book? And then that's when I would say, well, all they got to do is go to conversationswithblackmillionaires.com and they can download the book. And so that's how the monetization took place, right? I got on those shows for free because I had a story. I had something that was interesting to the audience. That's the one thing that I would say about if you're trying to get into media that a lot of people miss, is that you have to give the radio station, the television station, the podcasters, whoever is the media, you have to give their audience a story. They're not going to they didn't interview me to sell my book, my ebook. They interviewed me because I was a story of interviewing Black millionaires, sought advice, and got it. And of course, I was able to leverage at that time some of the biggest and brightest and best well-known Black millionaires. And so those names resonated with people. So I gave them a story which allowed them to put me on their platforms, which allowed me to monetize it on the back end, because tens of thousands of people would go to Conversation with Black Millionaires and download that ebook for, at one time it was $29, then we raised it to $39, then it was $49. And then I started learning how to create back end products from that. But real quick, just because I know we're talking about podcasting, those interviews were just done to be transcribed, but then now podcasting is growing along with this industry. And so now those very same interviews became the very first episodes in my podcast. And so now my podcast of Conversation with Black Millionaires, after we've kind of exhausted selling the ebook, now I'm getting people going to download, literally hundreds of thousands and millions of people going to download these interviews. And now I'm getting the downloads, which gives an audience to future people to be interviewed. So now all of the future interviews after that, now the language changed. And I do want to say this because I think this is going to help you and others, I believe, with this thing about podcasting, is that the language changed to where now, instead of me saying, I want to interview you for this ebook that I have or for this book that I have, I want to interview you for my show, which is what my podcast was. And I think that is a sticking point for a lot of people. It's the language. Podcasting history, for those who don't know, um, clearly there was broadcast radio, terrestrial radio. You mentioned that earlier. I heard you mention that. But Steve Jobs, man, the genius of Steve Jobs, really turning the music industry on its ear by, instead of selling the albums and the CDs, created a way for people to listen to music and purchase it for just 99 cents for just a single song. And that he did that through his device called an iPod, right? And so the iPod was very famous. And again, Steve Jobs, evolving that business, saw the value in that and started saying, well, maybe we can start having broadcasts directly through the iPod. And so, of course, he used his own name. So the iPod became the podcast, but it's really just broadcasting through the iPod. Now, here it is. The iPod is gone, but the language of podcasting is still here, which simply means that you're just broadcasting your own show. And I think if people just realize that you're starting your own show, you're starting your own program, and not get caught up on the language of podcasting where it seems so, what is this mysterious, scary thing called pod? It just simply means that now Steve Jobs, along with the other people that pioneered the technology space on the internet, has developed a way for each of us to have our own broadcast studio. We're doing it right now. We're broadcasting right now through a newer technology called StreamYard that wasn't around even back then, but that's how technology keeps evolving and keeps growing. But if a person views their show or views what we're doing as a show instead of this mysterious thing called pie, I think that would clear up a lot as to how do I monetize my show? How do I get guests for my show? What am I doing with my show? What are the topics? What are the things? Building my audience for my show. Then you'll look at the different ways to kind of monetize. And I think Nagalia touched on it earlier. There's really only a few ways to do it. Once you got a show, you can only get money from either advertising. You all spoke about advertising earlier, and you just showed in the middle of the interview how you have sponsors, right? Those are the two main ways that you monetize the show. But you combine that with what we've learned from the internet over the years, and now you understand that you can also monetize it by selling your own products and services on the back end, or somebody else's products and services, and you're getting a piece of that. And that's called affiliate, right? So you can have someone on the show, and now you can become an affiliate. And then if they go to their website and purchase, you can get a percentage of that, or you can have your own show. And then after you've built up your audience, you can say, if you really like this and you'd like to purchase my book, just go to herbusinesshervoice.com. And that's how you monetize it, through your own products and services, through sponsorships and advertising. But most of us never really get to the sponsorship and advertising because we forgot that we're building a show. And the show has to, as I started earlier, the reason people invited me on their show is because I gave them a story for their audience. So when I was on Warren Ballantyne's show and some of those other shows, they would advertise or market, tune in tomorrow morning where we have this brother Bedford on the show talking about how he got business advice from Black millionaires. So now people tuned in to hear. And I think that's what is missing from a lot of us as podcasters. We forget that we got to get people to tune in. And then once we have an audience tuning in, now we can get advertisers and sponsors, because now they'll know the demographics and the psychographics of all of the different people that we're getting tuning in. So I'm hoping, I know that's kind of a long-winded answer for you, but I kind of wanted to marry what I've done and what I'm doing to kind of show you how it manifested in monetization. Even though I didn't know all of this stuff then, I was just doing it. But now that I now that I have the experience, now I can share it and tell you and others how you have to think about this thing if you're going to do it.
But see, Brother Bedford, that's what I love about you. That's you are a teacher, and I mean that was textbook, college textbook. What you just gave. You know how many people it take how long it would take a person to come to that reality and that realization, just the information, just language. Let's
Yeah,
change the language. When we change the language, it changes our mindset.
yeah.
So now this takes me over to Mastermind,
Mm,
because you are, and let me make sure, you're the founder of the world's #1 training network and mastermind platform for Black entrepreneurs and business owners. We're talking about the mob masters of business. So
mm.
before we dig into that, will you just let us know what is a mastermind? Because I don't think a lot of people really know. I know I didn't really
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. Another one of those phenomenons that I'm on a mission to demystify, because it came, or it's the term. First, let me say this: there's not a millionaire or billionaire on the planet that does not, and I would even just say anyone that has achieved any level of success. But since we're talking about business, we'll use the numbers to kind of identify it. But there's not a millionaire or billionaire who has not used the principle of masterminding to become successful. That it's just a principle that they've all embraced and understand that this is the way to become successful. It's a universal principle. Now, it's famous from, or it became known through Napoleon Hill's work, Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. And he tells you this is the second principle in all of the principles that he shared in the book. This is the one that he highlighted as a principle of action. A lot of other principles are like when you start talking about the power of thought and all of those different things, that's like principles of belief. You believe these things. This is your mindset. But in terms of a principle of action, something that you have to begin to do to become successful, that's what masterminding is. This was the principle that activated all of the other principles of success or laws of success. And so a mastermind is simply what you and I are doing right now. We are masterminding. It's where one mind comes together with another mind, and then these two minds invite into the equation a third mind or a third energy that produces new ideas, new concepts, and it's spurred by conversation and question. That's the thing that most people miss, is that the core of the mastermind. So right now we're doing the interview, but if you and I were just talking and asking it, you're asking me some questions. And if we were probing like some challenges or issues, we would probably be producing bigger and better ideas that you and I can share. I think we've kind of done that in this process, because even Napoleon Hill said his interviews, which most people don't know, that Think and Grow Rich, those principles came out of his interviews of over 500 of the most successful industrialists and business people of that time. And he literally said that his work and his success was the result of his masterminding doing these interviews. So literally what you and I are doing right now, having conversation, you asking question, me sharing ideas, produces new thoughts. And as you kind of bore witness, right? You said that the way that you explain that, Brother Bedford, that helped a lot of people. You change the language. So think about that. For those who will watch this, they'll get a new idea about podcasting, a new perspective, a way that they can approach it and grow and develop. And it's all because you and I are engaged in this. You know, we're not calling it a mastermind, but this is kind of the process. We're two. Now, again, this is attributed to Napoleon Hill, but it's actually biblical. Remember, we're two
Yeah.
or more are gathered. So here it is, you and me. I'm looking at the screen. So we're two or more are gathered in my name. There I am in the midst of you, right? So now two of us have come together, and we're allowing another energy, another intelligence, another mind to come in, and it helps to share and disseminate this information. It's also in other scriptures as well, but I think that's sufficient to help people.
Oh, that takes it right to the core of it so
Yeah.
that we understand, because sometimes we get the language tangles us up and
Yeah.
we don't do anything because I don't understand, and then we get into excuse mode. So I guess you all understand how powerful this gent is. We started out with Negalia. She's a powerhouse. And here we are with Brother Bedford.
Oh,
Brother
she is a
Bedford,
dynamo. I love Nagila. She's a dynamo.
she is no joke. I'm looking at the time. I'm just wondering, will you just take us into, because I know the power of being part of a mastermind. Will you just take a moment to take us inside what it feels like? What is not what does it feel like, but what is it like to actually enter a mastermind? Because people sometimes think that it's just one person chatting it up, one person talking it up, when there's more than one person. We understand the power of two people together, but when you get a group together, what is that dynamic like? And
Yeah.
how does that help one build out their podcast?
Yeah, we kind of alluded to it earlier. Again, it's really what some would say is that secret that the wealthy do, because you mentioned like many of us don't understand it. We can't really wrap our minds around it. We don't get it. And it's because we haven't been exposed. So that's why it's for most people, these are the secrets. But again, once you begin to explore the world of entrepreneurship and business, even when I went to that thing in Orlando, Florida, right, that was a part of a mastermind, right? So it's you have to start seeing that this is how people acquire knowledge and information and build relationships. So again, there's this I don't want to separate and say, but there's this group of people who are extremely successful who understand this and do this naturally and organically, where for us it's like a new phenomenon. I've never heard of this stuff before. And that's why you and I are doing what we do. We're on a mission to kind of demystify these universal principles and concepts that should be taught to us in kindergarten and first grade, but it's not. And it's not until we start investing in ourselves and get out in the marketplace that we say, oh, wow. You mean, so this is how it's done. And so you're right. It's a mystery to a lot of us. We just don't get it. However, it's a principle that I believe is the new, as old as it is. This is literally a million-year-old concept, but it's so new to us. So what was, I think the Bible says, what was at the beginning shall be in the end. What so it was once old, now it's new again. I think this is the way to kind of help people to understand podcasting and all of these dynamics that we're talking about today, even advertising and marketing and overcoming challenges and difficulties. That's what the group produces, Margo, to answer your question directly when you say, what is it like? It's where a person is normally functioning in a silo, especially as entrepreneurs and business owners, functioning in a silo, trying to figure these things out all by themselves. And then now the opportunity comes to where now you can sit in a group or in a circle of 4, 5, 8, 10, 12 other brothers and sisters of varying degrees of knowledge and experience. And now whatever challenges are plaguing you, whatever issues are plaguing you, to now be able to go and sit on a hot seat, not necessarily ask for a strategy. I think you talked about this earlier. Everybody is talking strategy, right? Because you can Google just about, it's not just about, you can Google everything you want to know, but you can't Google experience.
No.
You can't Google wisdom, right? You can't Google vantage point, right? And you get that by being in a group of people, sitting down with me and Margo and talking about, okay, Margo, how did you get started with your podcast and what was the hang up for you? Okay, well, and just as you asked me, well, Brother Bedford, how did you get started? How did you garner the courage to reach out to millionaire? What did you say, right? What did you write? So a person coming in and getting that type of information in a group setting, saying, well, I don't know how to get expert interviews. And now they're sitting in the room with me and you, and we've done hundreds of expert interviews. Now that person gets a different perspective. They get our experience. They'll get me saying, don't do that. You might want to do it this way, because if you do it this way, they may say no, right? So that's the beauty of being in a group of people. Now, to your last point, the difference between that and a coaching group, and that's where a lot of people get in, and that's what you really have today when you see a lot of people talking about they have mastermind groups and things like that. They're really high ticket coaching groups, right? It's a way to disguise a coaching program. But in a true mastermind, it's not about coaching. Is there some coaching going on? Yes. Is there maybe somebody is a central figure who gives information and from a different perspective, such as like probably my mastermind groups. But I have to be conscious that I'm not coaching individuals. I'm there to facilitate the conversations and the experiences that go on. So the difference between a coaching group is that there's one person that people are looking to as being the master and teaching them something. Whereas in a mastermind group, you have the collective knowledge, wisdom, and experience of everyone coming together to give you suggestions and opinions on how you should move forward instead of someone coaching you directly on it.
I tell you, the experience is magical and
Yeah,
it is transforming. It
yeah,
really is. I mean, if a person, when they're listening, if they didn't know or understand or haven't been a part of a mastermind, is the mob open or how do people move forward? Because as a Black person, this is something that we can't sleep on. We can't keep pushing to the side, and we can't keep operating under this quasi coaching, mentoring thing that's not really getting us anywhere, you
yeah,
know. So I won't
yeah,
get on that soapbox. I just hate the charlatans. I really do, Brother
yeah,
Bedford. I hate the charlatans. They are not doing us as a group of people any good at all. They're taking money. They are not equipped to take us to the promised land,
yeah,
and it's a shame.
yeah.
So today I am very happy that yourself and Nagalia, I will refer people to you all any day. And
Thank
that's what has to happen. We have to know who's legit and who's not legit. Let's
you.
just put it on out there. So
Yeah,
now today, if you're talking about podcasting, I can teach you how to podcast, but Nagalia and Brother Bedford can turn that podcast into a stone cold business.
yeah,
That's the real deal. That's
yeah,
the purpose before today. Enough of this going back and forth, and we're tripping over dollars. We don't want to invest in ourselves, and we're wasting time.
yeah,
The thing that report that came out in 2021 was it measured Black people, how we listen to podcasts, how we participate with podcasts. Black folks want to hear from Black folks.
hmm,
Period, point blank, as my nephew says. So if we're not podcasting, if we're not showing up so that our voices are there, if we're not showing up to be able to train people so that they can be strong and survive things that are coming, then how will we be? How will we exist as a people and be strong entrepreneurs? How will we tell the stories? How will we present the way we can and should? I'm
hmm.
on a soapbox. I'm getting off of it, but I just feel it. I'm so sick of the charlatans, and I am so happy that you are here today. So tell people about the mob, how they can be a part of it. Maybe somebody wants to build out a mastermind. Really be trained so that they have a true mastermind.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they can go to the Masters of Business Network and Mastermind.com and they'll see it there, but you still have to apply to get in, right? Because again, one of the key energizers of a mastermind group is having the right people. It's just like what you mentioned, like charlatans and things like that. You know, it's the wrong people are just the wrong people, whether they're in mastermind groups, coaching groups, consultants. So you want to surround yourself with the right people. And so what we do is to try to make sure that we have the right people in the group because it is so intimate, because this mastermind concept is different. There's a lot of vulnerability there, a lot of transparency there, a lot of confidentiality there, right? So you have to so you have to have the right people in the group. So a person can go to the Masters of Business Network and Mastermind com to kind of see, just the framework. You won't see a lot of sales material there. I've learned to kind of, it's not even about selling you. It's about if it's right for you, it's right for you. The other way is just go to brobedford.com and just get on the email list. And then you can kind of experience me to see if I'm even the right person to kind of, because there are literally thousands of brothers and sisters who are doing this work who may be a better fit for you. And to speak to your last point, and I know we're probably running short on time, but by the barrier of entry being lowered with the internet, that's kind of what has exposed us to a lot of the people who I wouldn't necessarily call them charlatans. I think what had happened is that people who had an opportunity to do business on this level where it's almost free, they don't have to have the years of experience, the years of putting in the time to learn, to grow, to develop their skills. I mean, literally, a person can go and get a domain right now, and in 5 minutes, say I'm a coach, right? So I don't necessarily think that person is deliberately being. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some who are deliberately trying to swindle people out of money, but when the barrier of entry, and this is really for anything. This is why what you were talking about earlier with Nagalia's, I believe, is valuable on one level, but it's also valuable on another level. Is that when you start hanging around the free zone and the low ticket zone, that's where you are. That's why I call it, it's an investment. It's not a cost. Nobody wants to pay a price. That signifies pain, right? Or what is it going to cost me? But if a person is saying, what am I investing? Then the premise of an investment is that you're planting something and you're looking for a rate of return, an ROI, right? And so when a person is not trying to invest anything, then that means that they're not really serious about a rate of return. They're looking for what we call a quick hit, or back in Detroit, we would say they're trying to hit a lick. You're trying to hit a lick, get something for free. And unfortunately, a lot of us have been raised on that lottery mentality. If I can just hit it one good time, I'll be straight for life. And we're not willing to invest in ourselves, willing to put in the time, the willingness to become the masters of our craft, right? To develop ourselves. And so that's what I believe we have, Margo, with the barrier of entry being so low on the internet, is that just anybody can do it. However, I don't blame them. That's why the onus always goes back to the person who says they want to become an entrepreneur, who says they want to become a business owner. Now you have to do your homework. Yeah. You have to so you can't be looking for the shiny object syndrome. You have to say, how do I vet the people that's going to take me to the next level? How do I know that she can help me? How do I know that he can help me without asking a question, without paying time and attention to that person, right? That would be crazy for someone to say, Margo, how can you help me with my podcast? And then they never want to listen to your podcast. All they got to do is watch you, listen to you, look at how you've grown and developed. And then they'll say, man, I love what she's done. And then it's not a matter of what can she do for me. It's a matter of, man, can I invest so that Margo can help me so that I can be my best version of myself instead of Margo just giving me something, right? And I think that's a challenge for us, but I think we are getting to the point where we're going to get through that.
I believe that. I'm glad that you brought that up. And I'm always hearing you say it's investment, not cost. Mm-hmm. Once again, it gets back to that language. Yeah. Language determines how we think, how we interpret things. We could go on and on. I don't know. Yeah. You are just, oh my goodness, you are just amazing. I will make sure that, the links to how people can get in contact with you are available. I want to thank you so very, very much.
I'm honored, Margo. Thank you. And again, I would say for the people, they really should connect with you, because the best way to connect with me is to connect with you. I think that's one of the missing elements. Yeah. Even when we have people who are coming on the shows like this, and you and I, one of the reasons I wasn't ready, because I don't have a current podcast right now. And so to be featured or to do something in Womel, I am, but at the current time, it wouldn't be right because I'm so focused on masterminding and the way that we're getting people in. So I don't have a podcast. I do have some ideas that we're working on and developing. But that's because of the relationships that I've built through those conversations with Black millionaires and all the way up until now. And I think it would be a disservice for people to come to this program and watch you and then try to leapfrog Margo. I think the best way to get in contact with me and Negalia, the best way, now I'm not saying it's the only way, but the best way would be, how can I get closer to Margo? How can I learn from Margo? What type of relationship can I, so that Margo can walk me through the door? And I think so many of us run away from the relationship so quick. We're looking for hacks, we're looking to leapfrog, and there really isn't a way, a quick way to do that. So I would say for people who are truly and genuinely interested in learning about having their own show, learning how to do it right, learning how to do it correctly, is to see you and then let you determine through great counsel and advice, yeah, maybe now you're ready for Womel. Now let me get you ready for Womel, or let me get you ready to kind of talk to Brother Bedford about masterminding or something like that. But until then, they wouldn't know that until they talk to you. And so I would say that's the best advice that I can give. And I think that's a principle that we as Black people have to begin to fall more in love with. I never just point someone to Dr. Frazier, you know, just go there, right? It's a matter of, you should come to the conference. Matter of fact, sit with me. Maybe I can introduce, just same way I've done you, Margo. I'll introduce you to Dr. Frazier. And I'll ask you at the conference, Margo, did you take your picture with Dr. Frazier? That's how you got to get to know him. So now you got the picture. Now you build a relationship. Now you can have deeper conversation. You can have more lucrative conversations, right? Because of the relationship is being established. So if those are my parting words that I would say as relates to your podcasting as a business. Before it becomes the business, you definitely have to have some of the earlier things in place that we talked about today. And you really can't leapfrog that. You got to go through Margo. You got to ask her the question to kind of make sure that you're on the right path. And I think that's the best way to do it. It's not the only way, but that's the best way.
Wow. I tell you, sage advice. It only comes from been there, done that. What can I say? You are phenomenal,
No, thank you, Margo. Thank you.
man. Well, I'm going to cut to commercial, Brother Bedford. I will speak with you later, and thank you, audience. Hang on, we're going to cut to commercial, and when I come back, we'll talk a little bit about what's coming up for tomorrow. Okay, hang on, everybody.